So yes, I'm Kate, hosting on behalf of Electric Medway and Sparked Echo as well, who are behind the Electric Medway Festival. And here we are in this particular session looking at digital access across cities. So I'd like to first of all, I'm going to say if you've got any questions at any time, Cassia, during the presentations, by all means put them in the chat and we'll address them at the end. We're also, after the last presentation, going to take a short on Bruce of 2 minutes. I would put captions on if I can find self captions, not the automatically generated ones. So we may feel we want to take a break at that point, just for 2 minutes, and then we'll come back for the final wrap up. But I would like to, yes, also throw it over to our panel in turn so that they can introduce themselves and say a little bit about them. I mean, what I can tell you about them is that we have Wendy Dawes and Christopher Sacre, who are both artists who co-founded the Mess Room in Rochester. It counts as Rochester, doesn't it? Or does it count as Chatham? It's the intro, isn't it? It's its own place. Bit of both. And then we also have Beth James from Square Peg Arts. So first of all, could I have as an introduction to yourself and your work and the company, Wendy?
Hello. Yes, I'm Wendy Dawes, as you know, Cassia, and I'm an artist, and I wrote a dissertation in 2004 called The Value of Touch, Blind Alphabet C and Museum Approaches to Visually Impaired Visitors. And that is central to my entire arts practice.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Kate, yes, talking. Let's pass over now to Christopher Sacre. Christopher, can you sum up a little bit about your life and your work in about a minute? Take it away.
Hello, my name is Christopher Sacre. I'm based in the Mess Room as well. I've been an artist for over 20 years, and also I'm an art facilitator. Inclusivity accessibility is my key aim with working with museums and galleries and arts organisations. I set up See and Create in 2016, and it's a what's on listing for families who are interested in BSL and deaf-friendly events. I think that's all I want to say at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. And finally, last but by no means least, I will throw it over to Beth James of Square Peg Arts. Let's hear from you, Beth. Give us a little roundup of your life and work so far.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Beth James. I'm Artistic Director and CEO of Square Pegs Arts. We are a charity. We've been delivering various theatre, music and arts-based community and professional projects for learning disabled, autistic and neurodivergent people across Kent and Medway for over 16 years now. I co-founded the charity back then and have been doing that ever since.
Great. Okie doke. So and I know we're going to hear more in due course. So back to me. It'll keep coming back to me from time to time. I see we've had a couple more people enter the room. So I'll just let you know, as with previous versions of the session, by all means put questions that you might have into the chat during the course of the presentations, and we will be having a 2-minute break at the end of the third presentation, which is from Beth, in order for our signer to take a break particularly, but all of us may need a break, and then we'll come back for the wrap up at the end. So now I'm going to pass over to Wendy Dawes, who is going to talk about disabled access and digital experiences across social media. So Wendy, by all means, enlighten, take it away.
Thank you, Kate. So I am in no way an expert on this, but I feel I've got some experience to share. So through my work of supporting, enabling blind and partially sighted adults through their artwork and opportunities that we're finding and creating for people, social media has then blossomed around us. Back in 2006, when I started, I wasn't even on Facebook. So I've grown with social media, and I've learned an awful lot, and I learn a huge amount from the people that I'm working with. So I wanted to talk about hashtags, alt text, voice reading software, and how you can make your content more inclusive. For example, if you have a smartphone or your computer and you're visually impaired, you may have a voice reading software that will read your information for you. I can't tell you all the software packages. It's like all software packages, there's various companies that make it. One of them is called JAWS, and that does seem to be the standard, and that will read the message. It will read a Word document. Not all software packages read PDFs, and I trip over this all the time. And if within your Word documents you have an image, it's good to describe the image. So underneath you might automatically say, I'm going to pick on Isabel here, lady with pink hair, headphones. It might just say that underneath it. If it doesn't say that, it would need to be behind the picture in code, and that would be the alt text. So the invisible code would say lady with pink hair and headphones, and alt text starts from when we all start using the internet as a search engine opportunity. And it's just developed now that it's really useful for social media. So that's a behind the scenes option that you can put in. And if you can't actually put the alt text in, you can just write photo description or ID of the actual photograph. So for my own texts, for my own social media posts, so that's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I will then put image 1, image 2. On Twitter, it's really, well, they're all quite simple. You can put up to 1,000 characters for a picture description. You can only put the 4 pictures on Twitter, but that's really good. And it's just an option. So you go through your Twitter feed and you can find the option to add in the alt text. That's really, really useful. And when it comes to hashtags, the software readers, if you just have hashtag lowercase, so hashtag Electric Medway, lowercase e, lowercase m, the software package doesn't pick up. It just will ignore. So it's hashtag nothing. If you put hashtag Electric Medway, but capitalize the E and the M, the software will read hashtag Electric Medway. So it's known as capitalization or camel case. Just think of humps, humpy camels. An example I'm going to use, Susan Boyle. Are you aware of Susan Boyle? She had an album party launch, I think it was last year, and there were no capitalization in her hashtag. So this isn't Susie, this is Susan, this is her press team doing this. So it said hashtag sus anal bum party. So had it been capitalized, it would have said Susan album party. It doesn't. You can look it up. There's a whole story behind that. So she's probably got more. There you go. Cassia's put it in there. Thank you, Cassia. So that's another good reason to capitalize in your hashtags. Also, it's much easier to read. So some of my hashtags are ridiculously long. I can't read them, but I put capitalize, just makes it simpler to read. After the session, you will be sent some hints and tips from us, and I've put a link to the RNIB guidelines on social media. So it then talks about hashtags, it talks about picture descriptions and breaks it down. It's really straightforward, and it's just adding a few extra minutes on a posting that you do. So often my post will go out and then I need to backtrack and then add in the picture description. There's also personal choice. So some of the people I'm working with or using my posts, they don't want me to put alt text behind the image and picture description because it's then too much information. So that's personal choice for the reader. There's, but it's being aware that this is what you can do to help make it more inclusive. If you're having film, visually impaired person, a blind person would benefit from having an audio described version of your film. So we've got beautiful scenery going on. We have the lovely River Medway next to us here. If it's just a whole visual piece with some music, it would be nice for that to be described. Otherwise, somebody perhaps is just listening to the lovely music and they're not appreciating this music is overlaid on the beautiful scene of the beautiful River Medway. So that's just something to bear in mind. There's, when you put the date in, so this again is going back to, say, JAWS, a voice reader, the date, a screen reader may not differentiate the time and the date. So here's an example, I've written it out. So 5th September, comma, 1:10 a.m. If you put a comma after the date, the 1:10 a.m. denotes the time. The screen reader can get confused with the start time as a date. So although it might say September 5th, 1:10, it then might be September 5th, 1. So there's a confusion there. So if you just break it down with commas, again, this will be in the hints and tips. And I've added a link to Vocal Eyes, who audio describe arts and culture, performances and visual exhibitions. They're a really good company to look up because they've got lots of tips on their own website. And I volunteer for the Kent Association for the Blind, and they're based in Medway, but they work across Kent, and they're really good to check in with. So if you had something you were doing for any audience and you wanted direct feedback from them, or to perhaps meet with a group, they could be a focus group for you. They're a really good organisation to be in touch with, or you could approach us at the mess room. It's there's a lot of information to share. On our mess room page, that's quite a good feed to follow, especially on Instagram, because we are very good about putting our picture descriptions. And I know you can't put a link, like a URL link doesn't really work in a social feed on Instagram. So that will then go over to Facebook, and it's advisable to keep your URLs short. So again, Voice Reader will read everything that it can read. So short ones, and that's just more helpful. If you didn't put an alt text or a picture description under your photograph that you would put in, the Voice Reader will just say graphics. So you've got this lovely post about the lovely River Medway, and it says graphics. So person following your text tweets, they can't see, or they can't experience what the picture is about, and that's a reason then to describe the photograph. So should I answer this question now, how to get a screen reader? So that's I would suggest there then you talk to the Kent Association for the Blind, because they have an advisor who advises on assisted technology. So it's a software package. If you've got an iPhone, so I could have voice activated software on my iPhone, and it's just an option within our settings. And I can't talk for other phones, but definitely on an iPhone, I can switch on and off to have the a voice speaking to me. That's an option that I do believe that is on other smartphones as well. So that's just a case of going through your settings, and then you can slow the speed down. So when we're having a real life situation, which hasn't happened for a while, there's often lots of telephones talking in the background as people are having phone calls or texts are coming through. Is some of them just automatically start divulging things. Yes, the guidelines. That's a really good one to look at there, from Cassia. Thank you. Yeah. That's about it, really. I think I'll save some other things for the questions, because we've got I think with Christopher and I, where we share the mess room together, we've learned from each other about other ways to share information. So we are trying to be as inclusive as possible, but we can't always be as inclusive for each other's audiences. So if we have a film, we'll need signing and we'll need audio description, but then that means 2 films. So that's a whole other conversation. Kate, how am I doing?
You're perfectly well, Kate speaking. Yes, perfectly well, Wendy. I'm afraid I just got distracted by checking what was coming up next. That's great, thank you. So what is coming up next is Christopher. So I'm going to pass over to Christopher Sacra to tell us a little bit more about digital access for people with signing as an accessibility tool for them.
Hello, thank you, Kate. Okay, so similar to Wendy, I am not an expert as such with technology, but I can share my life experience. So maybe some of you will remember in the past subtitles, teletext, on when you pressed 888 to access teletext. That was the start, the origin of subtitling and captions way back. It was an absolute lifesaver for deaf people back then. But it's not for everyone, because English as a first language is different from BSL. BSL is a visual language with a different structure and a different grammar. So there are 11 million people in the UK who are deaf or hard of hearing or have some sort of auditory loss. There's about 150,000 people who use BSL, roundabout. It kind of shows what a small community that is, but it's a very close community. So I can give you some examples about digital access in terms of BSL. Obviously, the number one is captions. English spoken to written captions. So an example could be on Instagram, also on TikTok. They have new software, but there's also auto-generated captions. It's worth remembering to check the English, the accuracy of the English, and change it if you do that, if it's not accurate. If you look on YouTube, when you post something, some people don't realize you have to check the subtitles. They're not always accurate. Unfortunately, you can't change them on YouTube. It's auto-generated. So there's a different way of doing that. If you pre-record the video and post it, you can create your own subtitles and put them on. Most people use a software called Blackmagic, but it is a bit time consuming. I use a website called rev.com. They're based in America. So basically, if you've got a video and you send it to them, if you've got a recording, if you send it to them in the afternoon, by the evening time, it's evening time in America. So when you're sleeping, you wake up in the morning and you've got the video back with the captions on. Obviously, it's Americanized English, so it's worth bearing in mind that you might need to adapt it a little bit. For that example, you have to make sure you've got the right amount of words in the subtitles, and that it doesn't kind of trail over, that it matches the speech. So the speech that you see on the screen actually matches the subtitles underneath, and there's not a sort of mismatch between the words. It's important to make sure of that. It's about $1.25 for each minute of translation of English into captions, which is roughly about £1 a minute. So for 5 minutes, it's a fiver, more or less. To make it more inclusive in terms of BSL users, sign-in, it depends what you're offering. So you can get a deaf person in to do BSL on screen. So you can get an interpreter in. And you can do in-vision interpreting, where you have someone on the screen. So the person's there on the screen in a small box in the corner, signing. But the point is, you've got to remember not to make it too small, because then the person can't actually see what's been signed. So it's important it's a reasonable size for ease of vision. There's an organisation based in Medstone called BSL Training. It's deaf-led, so it's important to check that it's deaf-led. Deaf-led is better, really, because they have got deaf life experience and they know what they're doing, basically. So they know how to create better quality of access for deaf people. They don't make assumptions, they really kind of know what they're doing. And they offer 2 different services, which is, if you want to learn the language, you can do that with BSL Community. However, to become a qualified interpreter, you need 4 to 5 years learning BSL, just bear that in mind. To become fluent, that is, in the language. And they also provide a service where they'll create in-vision for you with a deaf translator. For 1,000 words, say, it's about £120 for BSL Community to create that content. So there's different options about how you put the person on the screen. You can have them in the corner or full size, but there are different options that you can look at. If you book an interpreter, I would advise doing it through the Kent Freelance Interpreters Group. They're all freelance interpreters based in Kent, and it's cheaper doing it that way than actually going through an agency where you'll pay commission on top. And also, because the communication is direct, you can have more of an extensive communication with the interpreter directly. So if I give you some examples of access, during lockdown, for See and Create, my organisation, I noticed there was very little content for children on YouTube that was, particularly in BSL. So I created a new Watch web page and some new programs called Watch and Create. There was 6 episodes, all in sign language by me. Also with subtitles, but no voiceover. Really because of the budget. It's quite expensive to add the voiceover because you've got to get an interpreter in to do the translation and what have you, and that is quite expensive. And also you need somebody then to actually, as well as the translation by an interpreter, you need somebody to then actually do the voiceover, which is an additional cost. There's also a theatre company set up in this area in Medway called D-Live Theatre Company. Again, it's deaf-led. And part of their work is digital as well. Sign performance, but also with subtitles. They use something called VV, which is visual vernacular, which is a type of performance and sign. So it's really important to try and keep things as visual as possible with less spoken language or word content, because it's more engaging for the audience the more visual it is. And the last thing I wanted to say really is in terms of accessing the website, there's a website called BSL Zone, which has got loads of programs, all made by deaf filmmakers with subtitles. And you can see some of the content there, how they go about making sign content, and it's really informative. I'm here at the mess room. If you want to have more of a conversation about these issues, I'm more than happy to do that. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. That's me.
Lovely, thank you. I'm resuming the reins again over here. So that's absolutely fascinating. So much notes. Both spoke to Wendy in preparation for today, and also just hearing from Christopher just now. We definitely have to have some conversations about increasing access. So finally, I'm going to move on to our last panelist, Beth James from Square Peg Arts, who is indeed going to speak about digital access for learning disabled, autistic and neurodivergent people. So Beth, over to you.
Thank you, Kate, and hello. Just to note, it is Square Pegs Arts with an S. We often have that mistake made and then people can't find us. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I've already learnt a lot from Wendy and Christopher so far, so really interesting so far, thank you. So for us, access of opportunity, challenging perceptions, promoting equality and inclusion are always at the heart of what we do. But I just wanted to kind of say that we're always learning and shifting how we do things. I don't have all the answers. And particularly as technology advances and changes, it's important to always be open to learning and be prepared to kind of make changes in terms of access. So firstly, when talking about accessibility for learning disabled, autistic, neurodivergent audiences, I think the most important thing to remember is that everybody's access needs are different. So for us, I think we have two main approaches to ensuring things are accessible. Firstly is to always place access at the forefront of what we do. So for example, we always try to keep text and information as simple, clear, and generally as accessible as we can. And if that isn't appropriate or possible, then we'll always offer easy read and other formats, for example. And secondly, it's about individual access needs, and that's about ensuring that people are always asked if they have any specific requirements, and then obviously our very best to meet those access requirements. So much has obviously already been covered by Wendy and Christopher, but it's interesting because actually the reasons that learning disabled and neurodivergent people might need captions, for example, are different, but also important. So, for example, we know that for some people, listening and watching at the same time is too much for them to process. So having captions means that they can actually turn off the sound, and then if they want to listen again afterwards, they can watch it again with the sound on. So that means that they don't have to worry about trying to process language at the same time. And also, as I said, it's about considering individual cases. So we work with somebody, for example, who has a very severe stammer. So if we are captioning a video that he is involved with, for example, it's important for him and respecting him to wait until he's finished saying the word that he's saying before the captioned word appears, so that it's kind of working alongside him in doing that and making sure that he's feeling respected in that process. So one of our projects is that we run an accessible film club. So we do accessible film screenings once a month at the Gulbenkian Cinema, and we spent a lot of time consulting, researching, and developing our approach to ensure that it's as accessible as possible, and we continue to learn and consult with our audiences on that. But we try to create a relaxed, comfortable, safe, inclusive environment, along with making adjustments such as lights being kept at a low level, the sound being kept at a lower level, because some people find the darkness or the loudness quite overwhelming in a cinema. Also, there's allowances for increased levels of movement and noise within the cinema space. We have people to help the audience find their seats, because again, walking into a large and potentially new space can be really daunting and distressing for some people. So having that kind of extra support is really helpful. And of course, we always have caption subtitles and audio descriptions also available for people who need it. But again, it's about listening to our audience and asking as well. So making sure that those voices are heard and individual needs are met, as well as having the generic accessible approach. And I think another aspect to consider is that the digital world can actually be very attractive to people who might otherwise struggle with engaging with face-to-face social situations. For some people, keeping up in real time with conversation, body language, facial expressions, and also the expectation to respond to those can be really overwhelming. So often with digital media, you can watch, listen, process at your own speed and in your own time and comfort as well. So actually it can be a really inclusive opportunity, obviously providing that it's marketed and delivered in an accessible way. And actually it was really interesting for us when we went into lockdown and had to transfer our projects onto Zoom or other digital platforms, which we did with all of our projects and more actually. Because although there were a lot of challenges initially, by taking the time to talk to everybody individually about their access needs, how we could support them to get online, to use Zoom, and that was different for everybody. So for some people, they needed a one-to-one session to support them with the technology and to get them on there. Some people felt that they didn't want to have their cameras on initially because they felt more comfortable that way. So we took a lot of time and care to listen to what everybody's access needs were, and by doing that, we actually were really successful in getting almost all of our participants and people that we work with onto to still be involved with our projects, which we're really proud of. Yeah, and the interesting thing as well with that is that actually for some of our participants, working online was more comfortable because they were maybe in their own space. They could turn their camera off if they were feeling overwhelmed, turn the sound off if they were feeling overwhelmed, things that actually aren't always possible in a face-to-face situation. So we definitely learned a lot from that. But overall, I think from our perspective, the key thing is to try and prioritise access right from the start of planning any event or project or communication or digital piece of work. If possible, always talk to your audience and ask what their access needs are and consider what their access needs might be, and try to provide events and experiences where everybody can be as comfortable, respected and as welcome as possible. And ultimately, by making all digital work and social media and everything as accessible as possible for everyone, it shows that you value all members of society by actively and intrinsically including them at the very core of your work.
Fantastic, thank you, Katie. Absolutely brilliant, Beth. I again, mind blown. I have a show coming up, and I absolutely know that I need to ensure that when people register, we have a line there that says, "Do you have any particular needs that we need to meet?" So thank you. As mentioned at the beginning, we are now going to take a break, a comfort break. So we'll stop for 2 minutes. Anybody who wishes to is very welcome to chat in whatever medium or format works for them in the break. However, I feel I owe people an explanation as to why we don't have captions, closed captions at the moment. We did discuss it at the beginning before we invited the audience in. And they can be just a little distracting in a live event when we have a signer as we have, but also unfortunately Zoom seem to have changed their way of putting things out, and I'm having trouble finding the auto-generated closed captions. Typing them out, it would be difficult to put them up. However, you're welcome to chat and use typing in the chat to chat to each other if you don't want to do it verbally. Let's take a 2-minute break. So it's 13:44 now. So we'll do a bit of shutdown for Bruce, and we'll come back at, shall we say, 13:47? Does that work for you, Bruce?
That's perfect. Yeah, thank you. That's perfect for me.
I know.
Cassia, yes, I've got a whole load of information here, and that also is then talking about, so you've got your audio described tour at Chatham Dockyard, which I've just done. However, does everybody know how to get to the dockyard? And there's you get to the event, fantastic, but how do you get to the event? And where it's all really confusing, so there's other things to consider. It's huge.
How do you find out about it in the first place?
Yeah, how do you find out if you don't just then have us that are then wanting to share our own performances, exhibitions, who then do share and shout, and then we're like connected to the Kent Association of the Blind or other organisations that Christopher's connected to. It's yeah, I get that a lot. I didn't know you were doing this, so we try.
Find out after the fact. I worked with one theatre, and I trialled taking first a blind gentleman and then a deaf gentleman to the venue, and I asked them to do what they would normally do if they were going to the theatre. So, go onto the website, find out what was on, choose a show, book the show, find out about whatever it is that they would normally do, and just tell me about their experience. And the blind gentleman said, well, I've stumbled at the first hurdle because I couldn't find their website. I couldn't find their phone number to then call them to ask them what was on, because their phone number was on an image, so on the website. So you know, it looked nice, but his screen reader couldn't read the image, so he didn't know how to call them to ask them what was on. And the what's on leaflet was a PDF, so he couldn't find out what was on or how to book it. He finally, with some help from his wife, managed to find out which show he wanted to go to and how and what he wanted to book it. And then they had, at the payment screen, they had a reCAPTCHA, but it didn't offer an audio version. So it was one of those, like, you know, pick everything that's got a pedestrian crossing in it, and he couldn't. So he couldn't pay, and he still couldn't phone them to find out the number, you know, to pay over the phone. So it was pretty hopeless from start to finish, really.
Yes, I've got we're doing various things at the moment, and there's a flyer that's gone out and it's being shared, and I have to go back in. So I'm not sharing it. I've got somebody working with us to do some sharing. I need to go in and then put the whole Word document in the comments. This is for Facebook. So the flyer is then transcribed, because it is a JPEG and it won't be read. It will just say graphics.
Yeah.
So the coverall in the comments, just a whole, you know, what this says, and it's immense.
It's a curious thing, isn't it? I keep thinking about the whole pandemic and how it's thrown the world up in the air, and then we've all landed again. And I think a lot of people are working in a different way and working slower. Even I was talking to, funny enough, somebody who's on the call with us today, and talking about the fact that actually for some of us, I think we've worked out that we were working above capacity, going too fast, or we didn't realize we had a wonky knee or a dodgy ankle or whatever pains and gripes were worrying us. But having a time where we do nothing allows us to reset. And so now we're coming out of it and going, actually, I need to take better care of myself, notice when my body's making these noises, but also when I'm building any project from the ground up, build it for everybody. So it is a longer process. It does take more time and it does take more effort, but it's obviously what we should be doing. And I suppose building in that time to do that is what we all need to do all the time now.
I totally agree with you, Kate, but I also think that once you've done it a couple of times, it then doesn't take much time, you know, because it just becomes, as Beth was saying, it becomes part of the process. It becomes, you know, then setting up a project just takes X amount of time. It doesn't take X amount of extra time because you have to think about accessibility. That's just how long that, you know, project setup takes, and it just becomes part, you know, it becomes second nature of how you build a project.
I see Bruce has returned. Have we got everyone back? Are you all right, Bruce? Are you feeling rested?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, I'm good. I'm relaxed.
Make sure, have we got it back? So Kate here is very happy for us to continue with questions. We've had all sorts of comments in the chat so far. I wonder if it's worth us going back over them just to make sure that we've picked up on all of them. It starts with sus anal bum party, which is marvellous. Let's have a look. So the digital access regulations have become much more strict. Cassia has shared a link to those in the chat because they are a matter of legal now. Then we had Jen from Anne-Marie, which I think is quite worth picking up on, which is about people with dyslexia, which of course is a neurologically diverse condition. And I'm just wondering, because she's asking about the screen reader and that question was answered, thank you people in the chat, but maybe if I go to Beth with this first, or actually probably everybody on the panel may have something to say about this, but it sounds as if for some people with dyslexia, some of the tools for people with hearing loss might be quite useful. So is there or indeed for people who have other disabilities, is there a problem if, for instance, people with dyslexia only wanted to contact the blind associations in order to have their needs met? Beth, I wonder if you have a view on that.
I don't have an answer, Beth here, I don't have an answer about the Royal Association for the Blind, and Wendy can probably better answer that. But yes, I think, you know, disabilities and access needs cross over, and also people may have multiple disabilities or multiple needs and invisible disabilities. And so, yeah, it's about being flexible to whatever that individual need is. And it's only for that person to say what it is that they need. It's not for us to decide what somebody else needs. If somebody tells us that something is inaccessible to them, then we have to listen to that. It's not for us to judge whether or not that's appropriate or not to their disability. That and I think that's what I was trying to say in my presentation. I think taking individual needs into consideration is the most important thing. Wendy can probably answer more in terms of that specific question.
Yeah, so the Kent Association for the Blind could they're making offering accessibility and inclusivity to blind and partially sighted people that sign up with them, but I could certainly find out all the software packages and then share that information. Do you use a smartphone, I wonder, Anne-Marie? That I have, so on my iPhone, in accessibility, there's an option to add in voiceover. So immediately my phone could then start describing it would just read everything that comes into me.
Voiceover on, alert, important.
So this is my phone talking to me.
I've got Android.
Okay.
Yeah. So I find it really difficult. I can read, don't get me wrong, but like these presentations, I have trouble in writing and whatever. So it's remembering things and going on to like having information that is accessible for me. So I have got a learning disability. I'm anxious and everything else. And I don't like loud noises sometimes. I've got ear defenders and everything, but I don't use them all the time because I try and overcome my dyslexia and my disability. So, and that's what I'm trying to do, trying to get something that is either free or at a low cost, if you see what I mean.
I noticed, Kate, sorry, I was just going to say, I noticed that you also you use subtitles because you missed some words.
Yeah, I do.
Sorry, Wendy. Yeah, you carry on, Wendy.
That's okay, Kate. I was just going to say the links that are coming up in the chat, we'll add into thank you, Cassia. We'll add into the crib sheet that we'll send out. So you can then follow those links and have a look as well at your own leisure. And then, there'll be things in there that will hit true with you rather than what I'm saying about blind and partially sighted people. There might be something that works better for you. Yeah. But we'll make sure you have all this.
Yeah, thank you. It's been really interesting to listen to what, like my child, he's got a disability. So this might help him, like the screen reading and whatever. He can't read or write, well, he can write, but this is ringing true. So.
Anne-Marie, if I may, I work with students at a university, and I help them access learning resources in different formats. So something that I've learned from a lot of our dyslexic students has been to try and change the medium that you receive the information in. So if you struggle to understand lots of audio at once, maybe record it just on your phone or something like that, so that you can go back over it later if there's details that you missed, rather than panicking in the moment and thinking, I didn't catch what that lady said. You can go back over it, in your own time, in your own space. And that just takes a little bit of the pressure off as well, because you know that if you have missed something, you've got it you can go back over at another time. There's also a piece of software called Dragon, which does speech to text. So it converts what you've heard into type, into, you know, so you can read it in your own, again, you can read it in your own space. So you can kind of choose different things. You can record it, and then if you think, well, there's a lot of stuff here to listen to, then I'd rather see it on the screen, then you can get Dragon to transcribe it for you, and then you can kind of pick and choose which bits, just basically to have like a handbag of solutions that you can try for different things. But that might be helpful. So maybe look into Dragon, and maybe get into the habit of, you know, of recording stuff on your phone or onto a tape recorder of some kind. Obviously just double check that people you're recording are happy that you're recording them, but just explain what you're doing it for, and generally people are quite happy to let you do that.
And just a reminder that this session is being recorded, so if anybody wants to catch up with it later, then please do. Wendy, I'm throwing a question over to you that I noticed actually links in quite nicely with the last comment from Tilly and Dell about getting access and knowing when things are on, and all the rest of it. It can be impossible, but you mentioned the Disability Arts Network when we were chatting prior to this, and I wonder if you've got some links or news about how can people get involved with the Disability Arts Network, and what does it involve?
Oh, sorry, that's Beth with the Disability Arts Network, and so I'll hand over to Beth, but I do think that we can all share as well, but I'll, Beth, hand over to you for that.
Thank you, Beth here. Yes, so I am at the very beginning of developing a disability arts network for Kent and Medway. I've got a bit of funding to do some consultation, to link up with disability arts organisations and find out really what people need from a network. That might be more of a social support, I suppose. It can feel very isolating working in disability arts sometimes, and having other people who might be facing similar challenges, I think, can be really useful to chat to. It might be about sharing resources, learning from each other, training together, that sort of thing. So at the moment, I'm just starting a process of sort of reaching out to organisations to start that process, with a view to hopefully launching the network at the beginning of next year. So over the next few months, I'll be kind of doing that piece of sort of consultation and research, I suppose. So do contact me if you are interested in finding out more about that. There isn't a mailing list at the moment, so it would just be to contact me directly, which I will just write my email address here in the chat. So just drop me an email, Cassia. It would be great to catch up anyway, I think. So yeah.
Fantastic! Look at that. We're networking, and it's Kate here speaking and wrapping up. We're connecting as we speak. Which leads nicely on to the last question. We're running out of time very badly, but I was going to ask Christopher, I wonder if there are particular forms of art that you think work particularly well in the digital world, and can be accessed perhaps more deeply than they can be in the I don't know, the live world, the non-virtual world. And I just wondered, obviously, Christopher is a visual artist, but I wonder if there are particular media within that you think are particularly useful and can be enjoyed in a way that they can't be enjoyed by people with all levels of ability and disability online and virtually. I hope that wasn't too much of a rambling question.
There's a few things really that I would consider. The word accessibility when people try to fix the problem and make things accessible to match their needs or make it accessible, the word inclusive, you don't really need accessible to the hearing audience. Sorry, it's the interpreter. I'm just going to ask Christopher, could you repeat that, please? So just to go back, yeah, sorry, just start again. So if you're talking about deaf accessibility, the aim is to make it more deaf inclusive. So if you bring in deaf actors, deaf presenters and signers and so on, and then subtitles and voiceover is making it accessible for a hearing audience. I think everybody starts from the top from hearing culture and tries to sort of fix it so that hearing culture becomes accessible to deaf. Why not make it like the other way around? So you put deaf culture to the fore and make it accessible for hearing audiences. That's really inclusivity in the true sense. You know, we've been talking about accessibility for years and years and years using that word. But you're talking about some amazing creative people and culture that's out there in terms of deaf people. So why not use them, you know? So turn things around, if you like. So, I mean, that's just something to think about. I wanted to put out there. How to make, you know, things more inclusive rather than just accessible.
Thank you. This is Kate here. Thank you, Christopher. That's very useful to know what the perspective is from people who need to be fully included. Thank you. We're running desperately out of time. However, I'm going to pass back round to our panel for one last sentence from each person. What is the one thing, perhaps Christopher, you've already said yours, I don't know, I'm sure there are others. What is the one takeaway that you would like our participants who are online on this call with us today to take away from the presentations that you have given? And we'll start with Wendy.
Describe your photographs when doing your social media.
I'm writing that down.
Please, yeah, describe your photographs.
Photographs. Thank you. Beth? Oh, I'm sorry, I should have gone to Christopher next, actually, but I'll go to Beth now.
Make sure you ask people if they have any access needs and listen to what those needs are and respond.
And last but by no means least, top of the bill, Christopher, what is your takeaway for everyone?
I think we've frozen, sorry.
Oh.
I can see Christopher holding his hand up, that's all I can see.
Well, I tell you what, in this moment while he's unfreezing, I will share with everyone that I've just shared a form, which is the Electric Medway feedback form about today's event. It's a snap poll, so please do fill that in and let us know if indeed it has been accessible enough for everybody today. That's a vital point to know for next time, so we may build and improve and get better. So yes, how are we doing? Is Christopher unfrozen? Oh,
yeah.
I can see. Oh, but you're fine now. Okay, because I was going to say I can do a little bit of translating, but not very well.
Yeah, Christopher's he's unfrozen now. If you want to.
So Christopher, what is your?
So very briefly, yeah. Just very, very briefly, yeah. Can I go now? Yeah. Remember, there's 11 million people who are deaf and hard of hearing. So there's no reason not to add subtitling to content. It's really important. That's it.
Gosh, that is fantastic. Am I unmuted? Yes. Well, there you are. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you so much to the Messroom co-founders, Wendy Dawes and Christopher Sacra. And thank you also to Beth James from Square Pegs Arts. It's been absolutely mind-blowing. And as ever, I'm learning so much with it, all of these sessions. And thank you also to Cassia and to our other participants on the call. I think this has been a fantastic session. Let's go and make sure that everyone is included in arts. Thank you very much. Goodbye.